If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
A warmer from Evo! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, we're going to have Nick Lorensen aboard. He does such good work over at Mid-Major Madness, taking a look at this game that we all know and love. We're going to be diving in on the landscape of some of these mid-major conferences, just if there's a little bit of a different tenor around these Friday games as well, because this is a little bit more of a standalone spot rather than these teams that are playing on Saturday where you've got 100 million billion games going on, and he's a part of the Queens NC staff, so we get to ask him a little bit about his Friday game coming up as Queens NC is going to be battling it out against Stetson at home, so we're going to be talking about that and so much more, so great chat coming up with Nick in segment number 2. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_81. Keep in mind letters EM. The email does not matter as per usual. Please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Really didn't get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Thursday and a little bit of cleanup to do from the Wednesday card as well. So let's dive into it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
After I had signed off, we got a little bit of Pac-12 action from Wednesday, and the reason why I'm doing cleanup is that the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, that is now from midnight to 3 Eastern Time, Pacific Time, that'd be 9 to midnight, and out there in the Pac-12, we saw a pair of upsets as California as a home underdog against Colorado. They get the job done 82-78 against a Colorado team that's really starting to slide away, even with Tristan Da Silva back in the fold. And for Da Silva, he had himself a nice game. He was able to go off for 20 points. They allowed Cal to just completely torch him. 14 of 30 from three-point range for Cal. Meanwhile, this Colorado bunch, they went 6 of 15 themselves, but they lose the turnover battle 10-5. Coupled with that, they had Fardaws Aimaq get 10 rebounds on them as well. This is a Cal bunch that was able to get quite a bit out of Jalen Tyson as well with a big 30 points in that one, despite Eddie Lampkin being able to get a double-double. This game was controlled by Cal in the second half after Colorado got up in the first half, and all of a sudden, a Colorado team, by the way, for Colorado, I think the lead in this one reached as big as like 17, but for a Colorado bunch that they started out the year very well, they have now went on a 3-game losing streak, so that is something to be mindful of. And for USC, they continue to be one of the most disappointing teams in all of college basketball. They lose on their home floor to Washington State by kind of 72-64, and I mean, for USC, they're actually 8-8 straight up, and yet they're 7-9 against the spread. You'd actually think it would be significantly worse, but Washington's first win at the Galen Center in 9 years, and for USC, they go just 6 of 21 from three-point range. Boogie Ellis was able to supply the team with 18 points, but for Washington State, how about them being able to get 26 points and 11 rebounds off the bench from Isaac Jones to be able to get that one through? We also saw Ole Miss put up 103 points on Florida, 103-85. As for Ole Miss, they go 8 of 20 from three-point range. Jamin Brakefield, Matthew Morrell, a combined 51 points, and this has been a Florida team that just has not been able to cover spreads all season long. For Florida, they're now 5-9-1 against the spread, and Ole Miss just one loss this far this season. It's only resulted in an 8-7 against the spread record, but still they've been able to do some solid work. And then you saw Butler be able to complete the job. They went on the road. They took down Marquette by kind of 69-62 as Marquette just 5 of 31 from three-point range. Cam Jones had 20 points, but went just 1 of 10 from the outside. Butler, they go 10 of 22 from three-point range. So despite the fact that Butler loses that turnover battle 18-10, they were able to get the job done, and they were able to win this one as Marquette was as cold as an igloo. And that's a good segue into what we saw on Thursday, because this Michigan team is truly as cold as an igloo right now. As for Michigan, they lose to Maryland by a count of 64-57. And for Michigan, after they were 3-0 and after that win against St. John's, there was discussion as to, hey, this is looking like one of the better teams in all of college basketball. They are 3-10 straight up ever since then. Like, forget against the spread. They're 3-10 straight up ever since then. I have not seen anything just so wild before. They were without Doug McDaniel in this game, and honestly, they looked fine in the first half, and the defense was a little bit better, but the offense slid away, and both of these teams overall for the season now after this game are 5-11 against the spread, so they've both been lighting your money on fire. But that said, Jalen Llewellyn in a bigger role for Michigan in this one. 9 points, 3 assists, but 3 turnovers. For Maryland, they lose the turnover battle 11-10, but they win the rebound battle 35-32 as you had Julian Reese chip in their 5 blocks, 13 rebounds. He really won this game for Maryland, who really woke up in the second half with their three-point shooting. I believe they started out 1 of 11 from distance, and then they ended 7-21 from 3 with Dante Scott being able to go 4 of 7 from the outside. So that was quite the result. Charleston, they've been having a little bit of a rough year, but they get a win and a cover against Elon by a count of 80-62 for Elon. Figured that this team would cool down a little bit with their three-point shooting. They go just 6 of 28 from distance in this one. It is a Charleston team that has went just 7-8 against the spread, but for Charleston, 8 of 26 from three-point range. They were able to get 20 points out of both Ben Burnham and Ante Barazovic, so they were able to get that one to the window. And really, your top team out there in the now Coastal Conference, formerly known as the Colonial, has been Monmouth at being able to cover spreads, but UNC Wilmington was able to rise up and get them on Thursday, 69-56. It was a relative nip and tuck game the first 30 or so minutes, and then UNC Wilmington was able to lay it on as UNC Wilmington wins this game despite going just 5 of 24 from three-point range because they went 26 of 31 at the free throw line. They also did a nice job being able to win the turnover battle by a count of 16-9, as well as you had Tazarian White be able to take over this game, 14 points, 8 rebounds. So Wilmington, they were able to get the job done in that one. And then when it comes to another team that's been pretty demonstrative against the spread out there in the old Coastal Conference, that'd be the Delaware Blue Hens, and they were able to go on the road. They take down Campbell 68-62, but they were laying about 7 to 7.5 points in this one, so they slipped to 10-5 against the spread as well. So a couple of teams to certainly be mindful of. And then we did see Drexel go on just an almighty burner run the last 4 or so games. Looks like they're starting to get back really to basics. They don't cover. They get the outright win, 67-63, but a little bit more of a defense-oriented game after they had really exploded with their offense in the last 4 or so contests as well. One of the top teams in terms of cover rate in all of college basketball is doing battle as I do this podcast, and right now looking like that CSUN run of 12-1 against the spread is in great peril. They are currently down to UC Davis by a count of 47-32 at the half. This has been a CSUN team that has been tremendous offensively, but they just gave it up to Kane Milling in the first half. He had 20 points, was able to go 4 of 8 from 3. Overall, Davis goes 9 of 20 from distance in the first half, and for CSUN, one of their Achilles heels is the turnover battle. They have been averaging about 14 to 15 turnovers per contest. They had 8 in that first half, so not looking so rosy there. We do have Gonzaga and Santa Clara just getting going, so we're going to need to do some cleanup over the weekend. Not really going to be able to do a recap tomorrow on the podcast because, as we know, college basketball Saturdays now have 100 million billion games, which that's absolutely tremendous that we have it back in our lives. With that said, that means that we're going to be having less podcast sort of recaps and things like that. But that said, at the half, we are noticing something that has been a constant all season long. UCLA not being able to put the ball in the basket. Currently, they are down 33-23 at the half against Utah. This was a closing line of about 8.5, and total for some reason was 137.5. I didn't understand that one, but for Utah, they are 4 of 13 from three-point range in the first half. UCLA just 1 of 8, as for UCLA, defense has been fine. Offense really leaving a lot to be desired for them, and that continues here. Illinois is currently up 37-34 at the half, by the way, on Michigan State. We shall see how the second half goes, as for Illinois, they had Ty Rodgers go 5 of 5 from the floor in the first half. It's really been a lot of Marcus Domask ever since we saw Terrence Shannon get the suspension, and who knows when/if he's going to be back for them. But that's up for Domask, only 2 points in the first half. And for Michigan State, they go 15 of 36 from the floor in the first half. They were able to get a lot of offense offensive rebounds, just currently not putting the ball in the basket as Ty Walker was able to supply the team with 11 points. We shall see how that one goes, and currently we're getting a close result in terms of Grand Canyon versus Abilene Christian. Grand Canyon double-figure favorite, only up 33-32 at the half in that one, and for Florida Atlantic, they get the win, but no cover against Tulane. 85-84, the final. This was a Florida Atlantic team that came out and had a really good showing early, and if you laid the points with Florida Atlantic, you were feeling pretty good about this one with about 3 minutes remaining. They were up 83-74, and then Tulane was able to make a little bit of a run with Jalen Forbes being able to chip in their 28 points, and this Florida Atlantic team just not the same team defensively that they have been in past years. For Tulane, they go 10 of 22 from three-point range. Tulane is able to win the turnover battle as well by a count of 12-10, and for Tulane, they do lose the battle on the glass 33-42, and that allowed this FAU team to be able to stave off the upset as Vladislav Golden, 19 points, 11 rebounds, has been rock solid for this FAU team all season long. Currently as well, my DK Network Write-Up pick is a sweat. This was between a 4.5 to a 5.5 point line when I was on this podcast. North Alabama was a 4.5 point favorite. As I do this, they're currently up 42-37. So we shall see if we're going to be able to get that one to the window. Hopefully we have cheering minions and a nice little beer review afterwards. But that said, when it comes to the game that we saw a little bit earlier on, that was just an absolute upchucking. And this needs to be mentioned. Old Dominion has been a big giant fade all season long. And boy, did they make like your buddy at the bar and could not close. Old Dominion gets up 39-19 against Georgia State. They were catching in a lot of places, right around 5 points on the close. You were able to get 6 at the time that I was recording this podcast, and they don't cover any of those numbers. Georgia State wins by a count of 77-70, and if you're looking against the spread thus far this season for an Old Dominion team that, out there in the Sun Belt, they've been dealing with a lot of things. I know their coach I believe it's Jeff Jones, has been dealing with health issues. They're now 3-12 against the spread. They're just completely lighting your money on fire. Not to say this Georgia State team has been amazing, but you're able to get Mr. Lane to be able to put in their 23 points. For Georgia State, they win this game shooting just 9 of 29 from three-point range, but Old Dominion only 6 turnovers in this game, but they get blasted on the glass. Jaden Turner down for 15 rebounds. Georgia State wins the rebound battle 47-34, and for Old Dominion, man, they're right now just looking for answers. This was not good, to say the least, and right now your worst cover team in all of college basketball is actually the Utah Miners, by the way. So Old Dominion in some relatively not so great company there. Pacific, we don't know how they did on Thursday, but they entered in the day 3-12 against the spread, and another team in Conference USA, boy, that is really having a tough time. Middle Tennessee, though, as I'm recording this, they're tied 31-31 with about 17 minutes remaining against Louisiana Tech. We shall see how this one goes, but for Middle Tennessee against the spread, this has been one of your least trustworthy teams in all of college basketball at 3-10 thus far this season. You've had a few teams out there in the Big Sky along with the Big West also be a little bit less than trustworthy, as Sacramento State may have been a team that's really not been able to get the job done, but it looks like this one is going to go their way against Weber State, currently up 42-33 as they were catching at home about 8.5 points. They entered into the night 3-10 against the spread, so unless if they really just upchuck all over their shoes, they should be able to get that one done. Montana State, they entered 3-9 against the spread, but currently leading by double figures against Northern Arizona, so we shall see how that one goes as well. And then when it comes to top 25 action, we really didn't have a ton of that was going down on this college basketball Thursday, but that said, we did see a few other notable teams that were able to hit the floor, and we did get a few fascinating results with having James Madison get back up on the winning track, 89-55. They take that upset loss against Southern Miss over the weekend, but this has still been a James Madison team that has been able to do a pretty solid job of being able to cover spreads for you. This has been a team that straight up has also been good, as they're now 10-4-1 against the spread. For South Alabama, just absolutely nothing going for them. 4 of 26 from three-point range. James Madison, 11 of 36 from 3, with Noah Friedel really bailing the team out. Guys not named for Noah Friedel went 5 of 26 from 3. Friedel, 6 of 10 from distance, 26 big points. James Madison wins that turnover battle 16-8. They win the rebound battle as well, 48-28, and this is just not the same South Alabama team that we have seen in past years. So that was relatively rough for them. And if you're taking a look from a totals perspective as well, there's been quite a few overs that have been happening thus far this season. We'll certainly be diving in on more of the set numbers, but Abilene Christian entered into the night 10 overs, 2 unders, and a push. That was a total against Grand Canyon that was well north of 145, and currently it's 33-32 at the half, so that one's looking a little bit rough. You also have a Northern Colorado team that's been very good to the over. 9-3 to the over thus far this season. Right now, you got 100 points on the board with 17 minutes left to play against Montana and a total of 156 half. That's looking pretty good for you right now. If you take a look at that over, the top under teams in all of college basketball, they have been really interesting to take a look at this far this season, but one of those teams has been UCLA. Right now, they're in relatively good shape. They entered into the night 4 overs and 11 unders thus far this season. Pacific as well, 4 overs to just 11 unders as well. And then Southern Indiana has actually been a really good under team as well. They are currently in action as I do this against SIU Edwardsville. You've got 97 total points up on the board with 8 minutes remaining and a total of 137.5. So right now, trending in the right direction on that one. It was a SIU Edwardsville team that was leading by double figures a little bit earlier in this game, laying 7.5 points, but they have been relatively, shall we say, stinky on defense thus far this season, so we shall wait and see what happens there. And then also, the Tommies of St. Thomas have actually been a really good under team as well. 10 unders to 4 overs. They see an over, though, on Thursday, and that'll push it to now 5 overs as South Dakota State. They go on the road. They get the job done as about 1.5 point underdogs in a lot of spots. 81-80 was the final as for St. Thomas. They just weren't able to lock down from 3-point range as South Dakota State 10 of 16 from 3-point range. They didn't take a lot of threes, but they were able to make all the ones that they did. They lose the turnover battle, South Dakota State does 15-10, but they win the rebound battle 26-24. And for St. Thomas, lose this game despite the fact that Raheem Anthony was able to go off for 21 big points, and also Kendall Blue give you 17 points as well. So we had some very interesting results on a college basketball Thursday. Unfortunately, not going to be able to do any cleanup on the podcast tomorrow with 100 million billion games, but that said, right now we're looking a little bit better with North Alabama, which is good news. And also, if you've been betting overs thus far this season in college basketball, that has been great news for you, along with home underdogs over the last 7 days. Home underdogs, as I record this, with few results pending for Thursday. 56, 46, and 2 against the spread. That's a 55% hit rate in the last 7 days. Meanwhile, overs are having a nice lead on unders. 151 overs, 142 unders, and 4 pushes over the last 7 days. That's 51.5% to the over. And favorites, they're starting to fall on some tough times. 139, 150, and 7 against the spread over the last 7 days. But if you're looking at the entirety of the college basketball season, favorites still heading at 50.7%. 1,276, 1240, and 42 against the spread overall. Home underdogs up to 311, 302, and 12 against the spread. And overs currently for the season are rating at 51.3%, 1,299 overs, 1,233 unders, plenty of pushes along the way. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Thursday. And coming up next, let's talk about some mid-majors. Let's talk about some of these standalone games for Friday, the tenor of conference play, and so much more with one of our good friends, Nick Lorensen, who does great work over at Mid-Major Madness. Joins me next on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beeson Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beeson Family Podcast. And it is always great to be joined by this man, as Nick Lorensen. He does absolutely tremendous work over at Mid-Major Madness, taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he is a hard-working man trying to find us just what we're all seeing in terms of these teams are a little bit off the beaten path, as I know that he's also trying to get Queens NC to a big, giant winning year as well, as they are in year number 2 at the Division I ranks, and things have been going relatively well for them, coming off of a nice win earlier in the week. We'll certainly be talking about their game that is coming up for Friday. If you're wanting to follow Mid-Major Madness, you're able to follow that at mid_madness, and then for Nick Lorensen, that is at the letter N, his last name Lorensen, Lorensen, and then the word sports all together. And Nick, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I always enjoy hopping on here. You know, a crazy week in college hoops. 4 of the top 10 teams have fallen in the last 48 hours. There's been some interesting mid-major results. We've had some of the top teams in that respect go into some battles or even lose. We had Indiana State lose to Drake, and now the Missouri Valley is going to be wild once again. It's been a crazy week of hoops. We have an awesome weekend of hoops coming up I'm excited. Another great week of conference play.
Yep, it is going to be another amazing week in conference play. And what do you sum up a lot of these upsets to? Because I do think that the commonality for me is that just hitting the road in conference play is just a completely different animal. And we saw Purdue certainly succumb to it. We saw even Kansas succumb to it as well against a Central Florida team that, welcome to the Big 12. Your first home game in the conference, you knock off Kansas. That's a heck of a way to start. But what do you chalk up a lot of these upsets to other than just the craziness of college basketball? Because we certainly know that is very prevalent as well.
Oh, yeah, totally. There's nothing harder, I feel like, in sports than to win on the road in college basketball. It's so underrated, especially in conference play. You're going to get these rivalries. You're going to have these amazing crowd. The kids are back on campus in January and February. It's only basketball. It's not football anymore. It makes it far more difficult to play in January and February and March on the road in these conference games and say December, in the middle of December, you're playing at some random mid-major. So that makes a huge difference. I also think, add on to that a little bit, a big difference maker is having these kids on campus. These kids are starting to get back on campus. They're creating the atmosphere. They're making a difference. And with the kids being back on campus, that also means student athletes are back on campus. So the home team, they've been locked in all day. They've been doing their schoolwork. They were able to sleep in their own beds. They were able to eat on campus. They're able to go back and sleep at night and do whatever they want. There's a huge advantage for these home teams these next couple months.
Yeah, it is absolutely massive what you got there, and I do think that it is going to be so interesting to see if this continues moving forward because it has been an absolutely bonkers week of college basketball. And Nick, I know you were alluding to it as well, just how big of a difference maker it makes when you are at home, and I know that Queens NC is currently experiencing this as well. You guys a few nights ago were able to pull off a nice win. Now you've got a big one that is going to be coming up on Friday yourselves out there in Atlantic Sun that is wide open. You guys are going to be playing those to Stetson, a team that, as we know, plays one of the more distinct and interesting styles in all of college basketball. How do you guys prepare for a home game rather than a road game? And just a team like Stetson, in which Stetson, they play super duper slow. They hit a whole bunch of threes, but we know that Stetson is going to give you a lot of threes as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be probably a 3-point affair. It's going to be a tough one. I think, we had FGCU earlier this week, but I think that Stetson's maybe a more difficult team because of everything they've run and all those three balls, and they've been playing well. They've been playing well for the most part outside of Kennesaw State earlier this week, and just a whole other point, I think Kennesaw State might have a good chance to win the conference once again. They have a really good team. Terrell Burden's back. But we got to get ready to defend the three ball. I didn't have the scout on Stetson, so I don't know as well as other people, but we're ready for a fight. And it's going to be interesting because one of our assistants, Bobby Herdusky, on our staff this year, he played for Donnie Jones at both Marshall and UCF in college. So he knows what Coach Jones does. We have a little advantage there that, you don't often see much in college basketball where you have a former student athlete who's now on a coaching staff go up against his coach. So hopefully we can use that to our advantage there. We're definitely ready for the three ball. We're definitely ready for their style. It's one of the more difficult teams to prep for in the league. Very well coached, very strong staff. They have one of the best scorers, probably the best scorer in the league, one of the best scorers in mid-major basketball with Blackman, who's averaging around 21, 22 points per game. We're prepared. Hopefully we'll go in and get a win, go 2-0 this week in conference play after losing to Kennesaw last week. A really tough game, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, but it's a tough one.
Yep, it certainly is. As joining me on the show, we do have Nick Lorensen of Mid-Major Madness joining me right here on Cuss Cuss Hoops, and I do think that this needs to be pointed out as well. What makes it so difficult, in my opinion, is that Stetson, they just play a style of basketball that really nobody else does, because it's not very often that you see a team play that slowly, just really try to corner the market on three-point shots, in all honesty, because they're going to take a lot of threes, they're going to give up a lot of threes. How much more difficult is it playing a team like that rather than your traditional team? Like out there in the Big Ten, these teams are also difficult, but they all play the same, whereas with a team like Stetson, they just play a different style of basketball than what a team is going to see the rest of the campaign.
Yeah, and it helps them that they run so many sets. A team like FGCU or Kennesaw, they don't run all that much. So with an experienced coach like Don Jones, obviously that helps. But it makes it difficult to prep for, especially on 2 days. And it's tough on campus right now because we have a sporting event every day at our arena this week. So we have very little practice time. And, playing on Wednesday, we really don't want to have our guys get too overworked. So we roll maybe an hour and we watch an hour of film. So we have to prep for this team on short notice. I don't really think a prep for Queens is as difficult as it is for Stetson because we only run so little, and everyone I feel like kind of, maybe it's just because I'm the coach and I see them every day that they're kind of one-dimensional, but it's tough because they have guys who can do a whole bunch of different things. They have a whole bunch of different sets and a veteran coach who runs it really well. So it's definitely one of the more difficult teams to prep for in the league. Definitely our most difficult prep so far, not only because it's 2 days off the last game, but because of what they do.
Yep, it certainly is going to be intriguing to take a look at that one. That's a game that I'm excited for Friday, and a Friday slate that I do think is going to be a lot of fun, even though it is a little bit smaller. And how big is it that you guys are able to get a Friday game this week rather than a Saturday? Because as we know, on Saturdays in college basketball, you get the 100 million billion games. You don't have to worry about schoolwork, but at the same time, a lot of games do get buried. And when it comes to more of these games where it's not a standalone game, but at the same time, it's one of the few games that are going to be on the slate, does that play a little bit of an impact for you guys as well, knowing that, hey, there might be a few more eyeballs on this game because we're one of the few games in town?
Yeah, I don't know if they're thinking about that, the players, but personally, I love it because you know what I do with the Twitter and all that, so I have a little bit of more time, and it kind of stinks because I'm a Duquesne guy, and they have probably their biggest game in school history on Friday, but it's awesome. I was mentioning it earlier this week. I went to South Carolina State Howard on Monday, absolute sicko of a game. But someone texted me because they have maybe a week and a half off between MEAC games. They're like, the league needs to do something about this. They need to change up the dates that they play, make it more wide open. I said, no. The awesome thing about the MEAC is they play on Monday. They get those eyes. It makes this something special. With us playing on Friday, we really only go up against Duquesne. We have the Boise State game at 10:30, so that's completely out of the way. But we only go up against the Duquesne game on ESPN2, a couple Horizon League matchups in the MAC. If someone's flipping around, instead of flipping around through 30, 40 games on a Saturday, you only have to flip around maybe 5 or 6 on ESPN Plus, and then you'll see, hey, Queens is playing at home. They're playing a good Stetson team. Maybe let's tune in. So it's awesome. I love that they do that. We have maybe 3 of our 4 homestands at home on Fridays instead of Saturdays. And I think that's more because of, we're out of the beaten path in the league. We're a little bit further north than everyone else, so it's more difficult travel. But I love those for leagues. Yeah, like I mentioned with the MEAC and the SWAC, and the ASUN's doing a good job with that, allowing a couple teams to play on Friday.
Yeah, but I think that is so massive as well, because if there's one gripe that I have, having a handicap for 150 games on a Saturday, that gets to be quite a bit, to say the least, and I would love to be able to break down more like a 30 to 40 game slate when it comes to this Friday. So thank you for your service to Queens NC along with Stetson, as our good friend Nick Lorensen is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And it has been so interesting what we've been seeing the last few weeks in college basketball, and you alluded to a team that I think is interesting, and that would be actually the team that Duquesne is going to be playing against at Dayton, because I do take a look at this Atlantic 10, and it has been a harebrained start to the season for them. I do think that Dayton has a pretty good shot at being able to get an at-large if they're able to get the job done on Friday against Duquesne. That is going to be a tough road test, but how have you taken a look at the A-10 thus far? Because I feel like there's been a lot of risers in the conference, including a George Washington team that I feel like is right now hiding in plain sight.
Oh, yeah, totally. They had a good non-conference, but the thing about their non-conference is when they were playing good teams, they struggled. But the thing about that as well is pretty much the whole A-10 outside of Dayton struggled when they played those kind of teams. I know George Washington got smoked at South Carolina, but what is it now? 3-0 start the conference play, at least 2-0 they started. They beat Fordham in that first game, and it was a battle. And I just feel like that shows a lot about that team to go beat a good Fordham program under Coach Ergo in 3-4 overtimes, just grit that out, get that win. I think Dayton by far is the best team in the league. I feel like this is probably their best team since that team that went undefeated in A-10 play a couple years ago with Obi Toppin. If they're able to get out of A-10 play with 1 loss, 2 losses, they should totally be in the question for an at-large bid. But all those other teams that had maybe at-large aspirations heading into league play, they're already gone. Those are already done. St. Joe's has now lost, 2 games in conference play. They just went into Chaffetz Arena on Wednesday night, and they lost to St. Louis. They wanted to say they were a high major program now. That doesn't happen when you go start 1-2 in A-10 play. You got to be better than that, St. Joe's. But there's a couple really good teams in the league, but there's no league really like the A-10 that cannibalizes itself like they do. They just love beating up on each other. Them and the Mountain West, but the Mountain West can afford to do it because they have so many good teams and they have strong non-conferences. I know John Rothstein mentions it all the time. The A-10 needs to do a better job with scheduling in the non-conference. They need to put some initiative towards that, and they need to do a better job, like we were mentioning just prior, about getting those standalone games. They should schedule themselves like they do the Mountain West, where they have it spread out throughout the week, have pretty much all their games on national TV. They have that deal with NBC, but NBC Sports Network isn't a thing anymore. I feel like that was one of the dumbest moves in college sports history. I don't know why people don't talk about that more. They signed a TV deal with a station that died a week later. A-10 can do so much. Dayton, it just feels like every time there's a question over these last 5, 6, 7 years of will there be an at-large in the A-10? It's only Dayton, and it's because Dayton does well with that non-conference schedule, and they're able to get themselves a platform.
And while it was a bad move, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Somehow, some way, more people were able to tune in rather than in the Pac-12 network where it's available in, I believe, 27 households right now. So hopefully once we get the Pac-12 to really go away, more people will be able to identify and watch those schools as well as try to be on the show. We do have Nick Lorensen, who does tremendous work over at Mid-Major Madness, joining me right here on Cusica Soups. And then I do have to ask about the late game of the night. That is going to be the Nevada versus Boise St game. Obviously, Nevada finds themselves as a favorite in this spot as I'm doing this right around about 6 to 6.5. But how do you take a look at this game and a Nevada team that, I mean, you want to talk about teams outside the Power 6 that are certainly deserving of an at-large bid. And in my opinion, I think it's a crying shame that they're not in the top 25 right now. It's all about this Nevada team that they don't do one thing great, but I'm not sure if you've picked up on this or not. It just feels like they're one of the most disciplined teams in all of college basketball. They don't miss defensive assignments. They hit their free throws. They don't turn the ball over. I absolutely love the fulcrum of this team.
Yeah, every week when I put together my top 25, I find it difficult to really rank these Mountain West teams. You know, you have Memphis, you had FAU before this little collapse they're on right now. And then you had the 4 Mountain West teams. You had San Diego State, you had Nevada, you had New Mexico, and you had Colorado State. Utah State's kind of coming in that fold right there with a couple big wins at home. But I've had Nevada consistently as the second best team out of all those. People don't realize because they lost the NCAA tournament against Arizona State by so much, they kind of overlook it. Like maybe they really weren't an NCAA tournament team. They lost in the first 4 by a crap ton. But they return pretty much that whole team, and they add a couple pieces, and they only have one loss. Their only loss was to Drake on a neutral court, quote-unquote, on a neutral court. It was in Henderson, so it was in the state of Nevada. But they are 14-0 elsewise. They have a whole bunch of guys who just play good basketball. They have a great backcourt of 3, 4, 5 guys that can just come in. They have a good freshman in that backcourt as well to add with the experience that they bring back from that NCAA tournament team. The only thing is I think maybe that line's a little bit too big. Boise State are wagons in the month of January. I can't think of the number off the top of my head, but I think they have less than 5 losses since 2021 in the month of January. Leon Rice does an amazing job coaching that team. They did struggle against San Jose State in their first conference game, but they bounced back and they had a big win on Tuesday night. And that San Jose State team really isn't that bad because they battled San Diego State down to the last minute on Tuesday night. This is a real big game for both these teams to make a statement, say, hey, we're NCAA tournament teams, because Boise State really isn't out of it either. Their only losses were against some pretty good teams in non-conference. The top 6 of the Mountain West is as tough as it's ever been. It's been great these last couple of years, but I feel like, you know, when we have Boise State in the wings after making the NCAA tournament 3 years in a row and being an 8 or a 9 seed and just people are writing them off, that shows just how strong that league is when you have a team there that could win an NCAA tournament game and it's been to the NCAA tournament the last couple of years and you're writing them off.
Yeah, but with this Mountain West in general, you just take a look up and down, and I mean, there's a legitimate case to be made that perhaps we could get 5 teams into the NCAA tournament. I think that would be a stretch to perhaps get in there a 6th team because UNLV got off to such a slow start. But, man, they're starting to pick it up as well. Utah State is currently ranked in the top 25. Got San Diego State and New Mexico, obviously, the 2 teams that are going to be playing on Friday as well. So, man, that is going to be a lot of fun to take a look at. And Nick, I know that you're doing a great job of diving into it all over there at Mid-Major Madness. You do such an excellent job being able to decipher everything in this game that we all know and love and helping guide the Queens NC Royals to some victories. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, follow me along on Twitter at mid_madness and at Lorensen Sports, LORENSCN. But yeah, big weekend of college hoops. You got the Stetson game on Friday. That'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully Queens can pull out that win and move to 2-1 in ASUN play. And then on Saturday, I'm going to go back up to Charlotte or the Charlotte metropolitan area, catch some Big South hoops. Winthrop's 3-0 in Big South play, and they welcome in Radford, who's playing on Thursday night when we record this on ESPNU against a good Longwood team. Big South, super underrated this year. They got 5-6 teams really competing up there towards the top. It's the best it's been in a while. But a couple basketball games coming up. I'll be tweeting out college basketball like I do all the time over there on Mid-Major Madness. I'm just excited for more hoops, Greg.
Absolutely. And speaking of that Big South, Drew Pember might be the best player in the conference over there at UNC Asheville. High Point, well, they're living up to their name. They're currently number one in the conference. Winthrop has been tremendous. You mentioned Longwood, a top 30 team in the country, turns points allowed on a per possession basis. Radford started out 0-1 in conference play. We'll see if that's 0-2 or 1-1, but they're a team that has Brian Antoine, a former top 50 recruit. You just go down the list. Presbyterian's one of the lesser teams in the conference, and they won at Vanderbilt to start off the season. So, man, that is going to be a lot of fun. And Nick, he does a great job of being able to decipher it all for us over at Mid-Major Madness, and his time is always appreciated. Big thanks to Nick for joining me on Cuz Soups, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to get Nick Lorensen aboard. He does absolutely tremendous work over at Mid-Major Madness, taking a look at this game that we all know and love. On top of that, I know that he does excellent work over at Queens NC, trying to guide that team to victory as well. And hey, we will be seeing them towards the bottom of the betting board as well, so going to be fun to break that down, and it's always fun to be able to get Nick aboard. Big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @unit_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first, and then smaller games are on the extra games board, and it's very simple. Everything's in time order except for the games in the Atlantic Sun are on the bottom, so that'll be able to keep things all orderly for today. And let's get things started with 867, 868 on the betting board. It is Minnesota, and the state with the smallest strengths in the union, Minnesota, is going to be on the road against Indiana. Indiana opens up a 3-point favorite. This is now between 3.5 and 4 that they are laying. Between 147 and 148 is your total line. I'm going to be willing to lay with Indiana. You got to be respecting these home teams when it comes to Big Ten Conference play, and for Minnesota, it's been an almighty run for them against the spread. This team is 14-1. I do like what I'm seeing out of this Minnesota team. They're a whole heck of a lot more efficient than I thought that they would be coming into the season, as Elijah Hawkins has really slashed the turnovers. Last year, he led all of college basketball in terms of turnovers per game, while he was over at Howard with 4 per contest. That's on to 2.7 turnovers per contest, 7.8 assists per game. That is number 2 in all of college basketball for a Minnesota team that they do shoot 36% from 3-point range. This is a Minnesota team, though, that they have very much benefited from being at home throughout the season. The Barn, it is an absolutely incredible environment in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a Minnesota team as 43rd in all of college basketball, but in a road/neutral court environment, they are giving up more than 27.5 points more per 100 possessions rather than at home. Now, this is an Indiana team that has really struggled with their defense as well. Indiana is currently outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but the good news for Indiana is that reinforcements are on the way for the team, and they are giving up 10.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. And by reinforcements, I mean Xavier Johnson. Him being able to really run the show for this offense is big. He's been back the last 3 contests First game back against Nebraska, didn't see a lot of minutes. Last 2 games, to be able to generate for the team 4 steals. Did have 5 turnovers in that game against Rutgers. Needs a slash down on that, but that takes a lot of pressure off of Trey Galloway, who last year off the ball was able to shoot well north of 40% from 3. It's been down to 24.5% from distance this season. Now, if you do have trepidation with Indiana laying this number, probably because their top 3 free throw shooters in terms of total points per game, as Trey Galloway, Malik Reneau, Khalil Ware. These 3 guys, they are the 3 guys on the roster that average north of 10 points per contest, but all 3 do shoot less than 70% at the free throw line. But Reneau is now shooting 44% from 3, 6 boards, 16.5 points per game. Khalil Ware, 14.5 points, a little bit north of 9 rebounds per game as well. So they've been able to do a supreme job there. What is going to be a challenge for this team is matching up with Dawson Garcia. Dawson Garcia is incredible. He's at 6'10", able to pop some threes. He will give you 16 plus points, 6 plus rebounds. And then Joseph Joseph has been able to do a pretty solid job on the glass. And then you got guys like Cam Christie who are able to chip in there some production as well. But I do think that this Indiana team, with all the size that they have, they're starting to really find their footing, because this team is just 189th with regards to rebound rate. They've got much better bigs than that. They've been able to do a better job of rebounding at home rather than on the road. And this is a Minnesota team that they're 34th in the country with regards to rebound rate, but it's a 55.3% rebound rate at home, sub 49% on the road. I do think that the home court advantage of Indiana reigns supreme. I think you get some late game fouling in a game where this Minnesota team not going to be the same defensively on the road as they are at home. So I did set my total 149, looking at the over, and with Indiana willing to lay up to 4.5 with them. 869, 870 on the betting board. Ryder plays those to Manhattan, and Manhattan is an underdog of 10 points. Total's 141.5. Semi-line at 10.5. Going to be one to lay 10 with Ryder. This was an opener of 8.5. So we have seen quite a bit of movement here. Wouldn't be willing to go past the 10. But I do think that there's going to be some positivity for this Ryder team from 3-point range. Currently, they're shooting 28.5% from 3-point range. But TJ Weeks all of a sudden has been able to come alive. At this time last week, he was shooting sub 26% from 3-point range. His career about 36.5% 3-point shooter. Now up to 35.5% this season with 9.5 points per contest, with pretty much all of his production coming lately, as he's had a combined 39 points, 14 rebounds in the team's last 2 games. They play that close snippet tuck game against Quinnipiac. They knock off Canisius in overtime. He has been a big-time player for the team. And then Mervyn James is going to be the best player out on the floor. 20 points, 7.5 boards. He's able to pop threes at about a 30% clip. And though you do have a Ryder team that has really struggled from 3-point range, they are in the bottom 30 in terms of overall 3-point shooting percentage. Not like this Manhattan team has been a whole heck of a lot better. They're shooting 30.5% from 3-point range. This is a Manhattan team that I think is going to really get bludgeoned on the glass, as this team, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are 247th in all of college basketball. In terms of their rebound rate, this team is 321st in all of college basketball. And they've been doing with an injury to Brent Ruppel, one of their top guards, who was giving you about 10 points, 2.5 assists per contest, which means that they really have to rely upon Jaden Winston, who's been able to give the team 4 assists, but really doesn't give you a lot of scoring. You've been able to have Seydou Traore, who's been able to give you about 9 boards, 11.5 points per game, but really outside of your main 3-point shooter shooting 39.5%, Shaquille Bender with 13 points per contest, you really don't have a lot of an outside presence. The team has also turned the ball over 13.5 times per contest as a relatively mid-tempo team. And for Manhattan, they're just not getting anything going with regards to their offense. This team in regulation, because they played a game against Mount St. Mary's that went to overtime, they have scored 71 points or fewer in every single one of their games thus far this season. Now, this is a Ryder team that's now given up 77 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games, but 3 out of their last 5 games have went to overtime. That has very much warped their numbers, so it is an interesting spot. I did set my total at 144.5. You do have a Ryder team I think is going to be able to take it to a Manhattan team that I laid out their offensive woes, but defensively this team is getting absolutely pummeled as well. This team has given up at least 74 points in all but 3 of their games against Division I foes thus far this season. So going to be looking at the over, as I do think positivity comes through for that Ryder 3-point shooting. And with Ryder, going to be willing to lay up to 10 with them. 871, 872 on the betting board. Fort Wayne, it's the road face-off against Robert Morris. And old Bobby Morris is an underdog of 4.5 points at home. Total on this game is 153 to 153.5. Set Fort Wayne as an 8-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a Fort Wayne team that has always been a good 3-point shooting team. The problem for them has always been turnovers. They've been able to clean that up with Rasheed Bello coming into the fold. He's really your guy that doesn't pop threes for this Fort Wayne team, only shooting about 27% from the outside for a team that shoots 37.5% from 3, but 15.5 points, 4 assists, 2 steals per game, and then Jalen Jackson, Quentin Morton Robinson. These two guys combined to shoot about 45.5% from three-point range, combining for about 28.5 points per contest. They've been able to do an absolutely superb job there. This is a Fort Wayne team that is probably going to take it on the chin a little bit on the glass, but that said, it's not like this Robert Morris team is necessarily supreme on the glass. They've got two guys that have been able to do a relatively solid job down low. Marquise Hastings has been able to give you about 8+ rebounds per game, and then Stephon Walker is able to give you about 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game. But this Robert Morris team, while outside the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 280, ninth in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and despite the fact that they do have those two solid rebounders, this team is just 212th in the country in terms of overall rebound rate. It's a Robert Morris team that is shooting below 32.5% from three-point range as well, turning the ball over 14 times per contest as Justice Williams, who comes in from LSU, has been turning the ball over north of 3 times per contest, and Robert Morris, they rank about 206th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, while Fort Wayne has been able to lock it down. They have been 27th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. It's a Fort Wayne team that has a really good 8-man rotation. Eric Mulder has now been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game, so he's been able to fortify things a little bit more down low as well. Robert Morris is a team that just feels completely outgunned in this spot. As for Robert Morris, credit where credit is due, 75+ points in 4 of their last 5 games, but they've given up 78+ in 4 of their last 5. Meanwhile, this is a Fort Wayne team that has been all over the place with their defense. They've given up 62 points for fear in 3 of their last 5 games, and their last 2 they gave up 93 and 106. So very interesting spot here. I did set my total at 150. I do think that we went a little bit too far. I just don't know if Robert Morris does their part against a very good Fort Wayne defense. It feels like just a matter of circumstance with that Wright St game and that Youngstown St game warping their defensive numbers just a touch. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Fort Wayne. 873, 874 on the betting board. Dayton is on the road facing off against Duquesne. Duquesne is a 1.5 point favorite. Your total's between 138.5 and 139, and I did set Dayton as the 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be looking at them outright on the money line. Despite the fact that Dayton is in the bottom 25 nationally in terms of total possessions per game, this team has really been able to put up some big numbers, and we have seen a bit of a fall off with the Dayton defense. They're about 139th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That's right on par with Duquesne, though. Duquesne is 134th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this Dayton team has been an absolute fire thrower with regards to their offense. 21st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Dayron Holmes has been absolutely tremendous for this squad. He stands right around 6'10", still doing a relatively solid job down low, as he and Nate Santos have been able to combine for about 13.5 rebounds per game. Holmes chipping in there 17.5 points, being able to shoot 42% from three-point range. That has been absolutely massive for a Dayton team that is one of the best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. As for Dayton, this team ranks 6th in the country in terms of three-point shooting percentage, and in a roadside shoot-your-guard environment, it has traveled. They are shooting about 38.3% from three-point range when they are away from home. Meanwhile, this is a Duquesne team that they do shoot about 37.3% from three-point range at home. That compares to about 31.5% in a roadside shoot-your-guard environment, but I fear that this Duquesne team is just a little bit top-heavy, as you've got Jimmy Clark, Day Grant. They have been able to do an amazing job, giving this team about 35 points per contest between the two of them, about 5.7 assists. Both of these guys shoot between 32.5 and 33% from 3, and nobody else on the roster gives you north of 7.6 points per contest. You've got Fusani Drame, who's been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, and he's the only guy on the roster that's been able to give you north of 6 rebounds per game. I was expecting a little bit more out of Andrei Seversov, who's been okay with about 7.5 points, 4 rebounds per game, but just lacks the pizzazz I thought that he was going to be able to bring to the table for this team. This is a Duquesne team that they're okay on the glass, but they're not amazing on the glass at about 37th with regards to rebound rate. Dayton, they're more around 194th. We have seen a little bit of a fall off there, but this is also a Dayton team that's only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. For Duquesne, more like 12 turnovers per game. You just need to see this team get a little bit more out of Dusan Marist, who comes over after he was banged up to begin the season, but has played 7 minutes or fewer in his first 3 games. I just don't think that he's going to be able to give you too much moving forward. And I do think that Dayton, with the way that they've been able to get good facilitation, despite the fact that they went through injury with Malachi Smith going down at the beginning part of the season with Javon Bennett, give you about 4 assists, 1.5 turnovers per game, and with this Dayton team really stepping up to the plate defensively, 70 points of fear surrender in each of their last 5 games, while the Duquesne team, they have allowed at least 72 points in each of their last 3 games against Division I competition, and if you want to date it back a little bit further, I believe that they've given up 72 plus points in 5 out of their last 8 games. I do think that that is going to be a little bit of an issue. This Dayton team has been so efficient on offense, and I do think that this is going to be a game close enough for late game following. Did set my total at a 139.5, so you're at the 138.5, looking at the over, but I like Dayton to get the job done outright on the money line, so looking at Dayton outright, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. Now we have my DK Network right up pick, 875, 876 on the betting board. Rice, we give our own to Lane Kiffin go. Owls, they are going to be on the road facing off against South Florida, and South Florida does find themselves at 6.5 to 7-point favorites. Total on this game is between 143.5 and 144. I did set South Florida as an 8-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this summer, but my right up here is actually going to be on the total, and I'm going to be looking at this total over. You've got a Rice team that is just getting absolutely cooked on defense. This Rice team, when they have played against teams that aren't from the Southland, SWAC, or a non-Division I school, they have given up at least 75 points in every single game thus far this season. Rice, overall, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, entering into Thursday, clocking in 246. So that's a big, giant issue. Meanwhile, you've got a South Florida team that has really been able to heat up from three-point range. Overall for the season, they're about 190th with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, but they, in their first 6 games of the season, just couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. They were shooting 24.2% from 3. They're now shooting 37.7% from three-point range. That's right on line with what Amir Abdul-Rahim was getting when a lot of these guys were over at Canisius State a season ago. Like Chris Youngblood got off to a really bad start, now shooting about 33% from 3 with 15 points per contest. Him being able to pick it up, not too surprised there. They're also going up against a Rice team that they are really giving it up from three-point range. Rice, 324th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage entering into Thursday as well, so that's not great. Now, this is a South Florida team that they really don't get a lot on the glass. Kassan Pryor is really the only guy that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game. As a matter of fact, he's the only guy that really gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, and that's where the South Florida team can be had a little bit. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and that's big because this Rice team, I do expect positivity here, but right now in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, they're outside the top 3 internationally. Against Division I competition, shooting about 28.7% from 3, but I do think that this is going to pick up. Makai Mason last year shot 37.5% from 3 when he was a All-Conference USA freshman performer. He's currently giving the team 13 points, 4 boards, but shooting 27.5% from 3. And Travis Evie has never shot below 34.5% from the outside. This is his 5th year in college basketball, shooting 31% from 3, 17 points per contest. That should be ticking up for Rice. Even if that doesn't, you've got Max Fiedler, who is just such a versatile man at 6'10", 6'11", 9 points, 9 boards, 5 assists per contest. Just such a good passer as a big man, and it's the Rice team that they're giving it up from 2-point range as well. Got a South Florida team that's really been able to pick it up offensively. They have broken 70 points in each of their last 7 games, and both of these teams are relatively up-tempo. Got a Rice team that's right around about 125th in terms of total possessions per game. South Florida right around 101st, 102nd, so I think you get plenty of possessions in this one. Both of these teams have their issues defensively, so my DK Network right up is going to be on the over, but I do think that in the end, South Florida going to be able to get it done. They are certainly the better defensive team in this spot out of the 2, so going to be taking a look at South Florida laying the number at my DK Network right up. That is on this Rice versus South Florida total over 877, 878 on the betting board. Niagara is going to be playing us to Fairfield, and the Stags, who find themselves as a favorite of 2 points, and total on this game, you're going to be finding it anywhere between 147 and 148, and I saw Niagara as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be taking a look at Niagara outright on the money line. Now, for Niagara, this is not the same level of defense that we're used to seeing out of a Greg Paulus coach team. Typically, Niagara is going to play super slow and super controlled, and they've kicked it up a little bit, but they're still outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, so they're certainly not running and gunning it. But that said, this is a Niagara team that's currently 291st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and very interestingly, they're giving up 12.1 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. I do think that that's going to be reversing course a little bit, and to the credit of Fairfield, they're still a top 145 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've cranked up their tempo. Last year, Fairfield was a bottom 40 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Now they're in the top half of all of college basketball. With them, they've been able to do a nice job with Jasper Floyd being a ball hawk. He gives you 4.5 assists, 2.5 steals, 10.5 points per contest, and the Bryson Gudine has been able to shoot about 48.5% from three-point range, so that has been significant for this team. But I do take a look at this Niagara team, having the guys like Kawan Marble, Luke Bumbelow. I think that they're going to be able to pick it up. Marble's only been able to give about 6 to 7 points per contest. He was really good for Wyoming a few seasons ago, has yet to be able to find it. Meanwhile, you've got Bumbelows who've been able to give you double figures. They go up against a Fairfield team that has one of the weirdest splits in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They're allowing opponents to shoot 37.8% from three-point range at home, 29.1% in a road/neutral-court environment. I do think that we should be seeing that level out just a little bit. And for Fairfield, if there is a weakness for this team, they're not necessarily a great rebounding team because they were expecting Alexis Yetna to be in the fold. I thought that he was really going to be able to elevate this team. Without him, this team is ranked about 284th in the country with regards to rebound rate. You've only got one guy that gives you north of 5.5 rebounds per game, and that would be Jasper Floyd, who only stands right around 6'4". Meanwhile, Harlan Obiana, he's someone that is 7 feet tall for this Niagara team, should be able to win the battle down low, give you about 8 boards, just under a block per contest. And then Obeng Menza has been able to also give you about 5.5 boards, and he's shooting 40% from three for a Niagara team that has now been able to shoot about 37.8% from three-point range. Niagara turns the ball over 11.5 times per contest. Would like to see that be a touch lower for a team that plays that slowly, but that said, this is a team that's able to throw it in there from three-point range. I think that they're going to be able to utilize that along with Obiana to be able to control things for Paulus' squad. And I do think that Niagara going to be able to get the job done despite the fact that the defense has been a little bit leaky at home this far this season. I think that they're going to be able to solve those leaks. Did semi total 144, looking at the under, and I like Niagara outright on the money line, set them as a 2-point favorite. 879, 880 on the betting board. It is Marist, and they play host Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac finds themselves as an underdog of 1.5. Total on this game is between 138.5 and 139. Did set Marist as a 3-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number for Marist over the weekend. They really took it on the chin, but past that, this defense has been absolutely superb as they are coming off of giving up 82 points at Fairfield. Prior to that, I think that they had allowed one team to be able to break the 70 barrier. I know that they had given up 74 points to New Hampshire, but really past that, this team has done a nice job being able to keep things out in front of them. And the big key for this Fox's team has been doing a better job of being able to guard from the outside, because this was a really good interior defense 8 seasons ago, but last year they had a tough time being able to guard the arc. Now they're a top 60 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, with opponents at home shooting just 24.7% from three-point range against them. They're going up against a Quinnipiac team that, as a whole, they do a relatively solid job on the glass. This is the top 80 team nationally in terms of overall rebound rate, so they are going to be able to bang down low with a Marist team that they themselves have been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to hit the glass, be able to haul in there those rebounds, as they have a 54.2% rebound rate when they are at home. Now for Quinnipiac, not quite the same three-point shooting defense as well as for Quinnipiac. They are allowing opponents to bomb it at a clip of 33.5% from three-point range. That's 188th in all of college basketball, so it's not bad, but it's not great. I do like what Matt Blonich has been able to bring to the table. 18.5 points per game, shoots over 40% from three-point range, and this is going to be one of the toughest tests for Marist to date, as this Quinnipiac team does have a lot of guys that are able to throw it in there. They're shooting as a collective about 34.3% from three-point range, but among their top 5 scorers, every one of them shoot at least 36.6% from three-point range, including Amari Tice, Paul Otinho. These two guys have been able to combine for about 23 points, 13 rebounds per contest. So, like what I've been seeing there, they've had Richard Varvers dealing with a little bit of an injury. He's been out since early December, so that does put them behind the 8 ball. But you do have Savion Lewis as well, who's been able to give out 8 assists per contest. That is a top 5 mark in all of college basketball. But for Marist, even though they don't have anyone quite like that, they've been getting good production recently out of Jaden Collins. Collins has been able to step up as a true freshman and has been able to give the team quite a bit of facilitation recently, as he's had a combined 22 assists in the last 4 games now. That has come with 3+ turnovers in the last 3 games as well, so I do think that that's going to lead to this being a little bit of a sloppier game of Marist. 13 turnovers per game. They do shoot 64% at the free throw line. That's a little bit of an issue. I just have that much faith in this defense, though, for them to be able to get it done, and what I think is going to be very much a nip and tuck game. I do think that Marist going to be able to slow this game down. I did set Marist as a 3-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the small number with them, and did set my total at 135. Looking at the under and looking at Marist line, the number 881, 882 on the betting board. Canisius is going to be playing us to Siena. Siena's an 11.5 to a 12-point underdog, and your total on this game, it is 140.5. This opened up at a 13.5, and at 13.5, I would have been willing to take the points with Siena because they do have some reinforcements on the way, and it's a Siena team that's been getting completely cooked. They're in the bottom 50 nationally in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They've been getting destroyed on the glass. They shoot 58.5% the free throw line. They shoot 26.5% from three-point range. These 16.5 turnovers in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. But now they do have Michael Ealy fully healthy and Sean Drew-Gordon in terms of points per game. Top two guys. And for Drew-Gordon, he's really been able to give this team production. 20-plus points in all 4 games that he's been out there. He's supplying about 7 rebounds per game, so that elevates his team. But in the 4 games since Drew-Gordon has been back, Siena has allowed at least 70 points in every one of them, 79-plus points in 3 others 4 games. And this is a Canisius team that they do a really good job of just being able to get to 70 on the regular, as this Canisius team has been able to score 70-plus points in all but 2 out of their last 12 games. And I do think that you're going to see this Canisius team just continue to be able to fire it in there from three-point range, as overall, this is a team that is shooting 38% from three-point range, going up against a Siena team that just has not been able to guard their arc to save their lives all season long. And for this Canisius team, it's just really balanced, as you've got the man whose name I can never pronounce in Siam, Ujandal, along with Trey Dinkins, who have been able to combine for about 31.5 points per contest between the two of them. They shoot in that pocket about 39% from three-point range. When it comes to this Canisius team, they do get a little bit of a bump at home because this is a bunch against D1 competition, so this takes out the non-D1 games that they have benefited from. They're shooting about 37% from 3, but this goes up to 39.7% when they are at home. They also have a double-double machine down low in Frank Mitchell, so they're able to give you 12.5 points, 10.5 boards. The rebounds per game is a top 10 mark in all of college basketball, coming off of grabbing 21 rebounds in that game against Rider that went to overtime. And now Yuri Fritz at 6'10" is able to give you a little bit of versatility as well, with the Siena team having just too many turnovers from Zach Tekken, who's been able to give you 3.5 assists, but 3.2 turnovers per game with the Siena team, despite having Drew-Gordon back in the fold, just having a really tough time getting things going with their offense, as this Siena team has been able to break the 70-point plateau just once since opening night, and that game against the Cornell team that's one of the most up-tempo in all of college basketball does really lead to a lot of concern. It does lead also into a situation of something's got to give, because they're getting torched defensively, but they're getting destroyed as well with regards to the turnovers. I did set my total at 144.5. I do think that Drew-Gordon being back in the fold is going to help out the Siena offense, but has not helped out this defense one bit. I think Canisius goes bombs away from three-point range, so want to lay up to 12 with Canisius. Set my total at 144.5. So also looking at the over 883, 884 on the betting board. It is Buffalo, and they're going to be on the road facing off against Akron, and Akron is a favorite of 17.5 points. Your total on this game is 142.5 to 143.5. No doubt about it, Akron should be a pretty sizable favorite. Double-double machine, Enrique Freeman has been absolutely tremendous for this team, and I believe he leads all of college basketball with regards to rebounds per game. 18 points, 13 boards per contest. This guy's been spectacular, and Ali coming back in the fold at 6'8". He's able to let it fly from three-point range, has been able to supply the team with 16 points, 3 assists per contest. That does help out the backcourt, but I'm going to be willing to take the points with Buffalo. Fully recognize that Buffalo's had a tough time taking care of the ball. They have 16 turnovers per game, a bottom 25 team in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis. The one thing that this team has been able to do a relatively solid job of is being able to hit the glass, so as you do have someone inside Chapman who's able to give you 6.5 boards. He's shipping in there about 18 points per contest. Not saying his team is going to be able to completely win the battle on the glass, but that said, with regards to this Buffalo team, they're about a league average team in terms of rebound rate. They've actually got a positive rebound rate when they're in a roadside-shoot-record environment, and for everything that Enrique Freeman does well, this team is still outside the top 75 in Akron in terms of overall rebound rate. So I do think that also having Janavius Smith chipping in their 8 points, 9.5 rebounds per game is big, and now they've found someone in Anquan Bolden Jr. that is able to launch from three-point range, as he's been able to about 35.5% of his threes. He's done a little bit of a better job of helping this Buffalo team be able to take care of the ball. It's still been pretty unsightly with that regard, but as a Buffalo team has worked on that just a little bit. For Buffalo, recognize that this team is still 2-13 straight up, but we have seen some signs of life with this offense, breaking the 75-point plateau to their last 3 games. What has really been of concern has been the defense for this team, giving up 80-plus points each of their last 2 games, and now they have to go up against an Akron team that typically they're lauded for their defense, but this Akron bunch, they've now been able to get to at least 73 points in 6 out of their last 7 games, so they certainly have been cooking with that regard, despite the fact that it's been a little bit mix and match out there in the backcourt. Caleb Thornton has been your main facilitator. giving you about 3 assists per contest. This is a Buffalo team that is getting completely clocked in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but this Akron team, not quite the same defensively as they have been in past years as well. They're about 128th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, I did set my total at a 141.5. Neither of these teams are necessarily super duper up tempo. Buffalo, under the new coaching regime, they certainly have been playing a little bit more slowly, so this is a spot where I'm going to be taking a look at the under, and it is a Buffalo team that is still not shooting at the world's greatest from three-point range. Getting Isaiah Adams back with his 12.5 points, 4.5 boards is help, but they're still shooting 26.3% from three-point range, so going to be diving in on the under, but at 16 plus, also going to be looking at the points with Buffalo. 885, 886 on the betting board. It is Cleveland State, and Cleveland State is going to be hitting the road. They're going to be facing off against UW Milwaukee, and UW Milwaukee does find themselves as 1.5 to 2-point favorites. Your total on this game, it is 158.5, and I've had to shade up my totals quite a bit for this UW Milwaukee team, but I do think we've went a little bit too far. Set my total at 152. I'm going to be taking a look at this total under. It is a Cleveland State team that's still not super up-tempo. With Cleveland State as well, I just do fear a little bit that the three-point shooting that we've been seeing thus far this season is going to take a little bit of a nosedive, as Cleveland State last year was a bottom 75 team in all of college basketball in terms of three-point shooting percentage. They're now a top 55 team in terms of three-point shooting percentage, with largely the same guys that we saw from a season ago. Tristan Iranura has been able to give you about 16.5 points per contest, shoots it quite well from three-point range, so I do love what he's been able to bring to the table for this team. You've got Tay Williams, who's been able to give you double figures. He's been able to shoot it much better from three-point range as well, and this is still a Cleveland State team that they're able to manufacture some turnovers, and they go up against a UW Milwaukee team that, ever since BJ Freeman has come back in the fold, you do have to account for the fact that they are playing quite a bit more up-tempo. He was by far their top scorer prior to going down with an injury, and now he's been able to restore order for this team when he's been out there for his 9 games this far this season. 19 points, right around 6 boards per contest, and with UW Milwaukee, even though they don't necessarily play super duper up-tempo, it does feel like you get more possessions with this game just because they have been quite poor on the glass. This is a team that, with regards to overall rebound rate this season, they have been right around about 197th in all of college basketball. They're allowing opponents to get a lot of second and third chances, and for UW Milwaukee, not like they shoot it amazing from 3. They shoot about 32.5% from 3. BJ Freeman along with Eric Pratt have shot north of 40% from three-point range. That's how you don't have a single other player on the roster that gives you north of 6 points per contest, and they've got 7 in total, shooting above 26.5% from three-point range. So it is quite a top-heavy team for Cleveland State. They themselves have been giving up a little bit more on defense, having given up 77-plus points in now 4 of their last 5 games, while the offense has been able to tick up. That said, for this UW Milwaukee team, they have been very much all over the place in terms of their offense as well. They've gotten to the 75-point plateau in each of their last 5 games, but I do fear that UW Milwaukee is going to see a little bit of a drop-off with how top-heavy their three-point shooting is, and this is a Cleveland State team that they do generate quite a few turnovers. They're a top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis with this Cleveland State team. They've also done a nice job of being able to guard the three-point arc as well. They're in the top 100 nationally in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. UW Milwaukee, well, they are not that. They are 335th in the country with this regard, but they've actually been doing a better job guarding the three-point arc when they've been on the road rather than at home, and I do think that we're going to see that iron out just a little bit. So this is a circumstance where I did set my total at a 152. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. I do like UW Milwaukee now that BJ Freeman is back in the fold. He really adds some rebounding to this bunch. It's a Cleveland State team that is very much hit or miss, and they allowed a lot of second chances as well. So going to be looking at the under, and I did say UW Milwaukee is a 2-point favorite, so going to be one to lay up to 1.5 with them. 887, 888 on the betting board. It is DePaul on the road facing off against Villanova. Villanova does find themselves as favorites of 19 points with your total 135.5. Now Villanova could only set them as an 18-point favorite. At 19, it's my buy point on a DePaul team that's relatively rough to say the least, but what else is rough is Villanova and the way that they've been playing defense. They are outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and that's where I do think that DePaul is going to be able to hold in this game. It's Villanova bunch that overall, they actually have not been bad with their defense. They're 39th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, but they're giving up more points per possession when they're at home rather than on the road, and this is a Villanova team that still plays very slow and under control, so it does make it a little bit more difficult for them to win by margin. 264th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Now, when it comes to this DePaul team, they are well outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. They're in 5th in all of college basketball, so Man, that has been rough, and you don't have a single player on this DePaul team that's giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. DePaul 315th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Villanova certainly going to be able to win that battle with Eric Dixon, with Tyler Burton being able to combine for 12-plus rebounds per contest. And Dixon has been able to do a very solid job, be able to supply for this team 15-plus points per contest. But this Villanova team has been dealing with some injuries in the backcourt. They've really needed to have Jordan Longino and company be able to step up in recent days because they have been dealing with that ailment to Justin Moore, who he really does amplify the Villanova defense just a little bit. We have seen without him in the fold for this Villanova team, it's been a little bit hit or miss. Honestly, the defense has been just fine, but offense has really suffered as well, scoring 71 points and fewer in now 4 of their last 5 games. So that's something to be mindful of, and I do think that with this Villanova team, they are going to be able to get a little bit more moving forward out of Hakeem Hart. He's been able to shoot 38% from three-point range in the 5 games that we have been seeing Justin Moore out of the fold. He has gotten to double figures in 4 of them. It is a Villanova team that they still do a nice job with the little things, shooting 81.5% the free throw line, top 10 mark in all of college basketball, only turning the ball over 10.5 times per contest, but I do think that DePaul is going to be able to take advantage of the fact that Villanova has not been the world's greatest three-point shooting defense, as you've got Jeremiah Oden and Chico Carter combining to shoot about 40% from three-point range. These 2 guys are able to combine for about 23.5 points per contest, and it's a DePaul team that has actually been able to travel a little bit with regards to their three-point shooting. They're actually shooting about 34.5% from three-point range in a road/shoot-record environment, so I do think that that's going to be very beneficial to them. And this is a Villanova team that they're a little bit hit or miss from distance, shooting just 32.4% from three-point range at home. They are going to be able to dominate down low. Deshaun Nelson, though, does provide a little bit of versatility for DePaul. DePaul, they're going to fall in this game. There's no question about it, but that said, I do think that they had just enough threes to be able to remain lively in this one, and it is a DePaul team that they themselves have been giving up quite a few points, 84 plus, in now 3 out of their last 5 games, and the last time they faced off against Villanova, gave up a whopping 84 points in that one. I do, though, think that DePaul, after they lost 84-48 the first time around, they're going to have a little bit more success in shooting 4 of 24 from three-point range. So it is a circumstance where I did set my line at 18. I'm going to be willing to take 19 with DePaul, and with this total, set mine at a 136. I do think those three-point shots start to fall. So looking at the over and taking the points with DePaul, 889, 890 on the betting board. Wright State hopes to be the right side on the road against Youngstown St. Youngstown State is a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite. Totals between 166 and 166.5. Set my total at a 165. So I'm going to be taking a look at the under with Youngstown State. They've actually become a top 150 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Wright State, they are not a top 150 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, they are outside the top 300. I guess it's been a little bit better for this Wright State team recently. They have given up 76 points or fewer in now 3 out of their last 5 games, so I guess there's been a little bit of improvement. And for Wright State, you know that this team is going to bomb it from three-point range. You've got Tanner Holden along Trey Calvin, both shooting north of 43.5% from three-point range. And Holden is actually shooting 50% from three-point range. Calvin's able to give you 19.5 points per contest. Holden more around 17.8 points per contest. And then down low, you've got Brandon Noel, A.J. Braun doing a relatively solid job of being able to give this team some boards. And Noel actually shoots about 40.5% from three-point range as well. Wright State as a whole, they are shooting about 38.8% from three-point range. That is a top 50 mark in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, 13th in all of college basketball. And in a road/shoot-record environment, Wright State is shooting 41.6% from three-point range. That is number 4 in all of college basketball. With Noel and Braun, they've been able to combine for about 25 points per contest. But this is a little bit of a top-heavy Wright State team, and they don't play super-duper up-tempo. For a team that has as much scoring and gives up as many points as Wright State, you'd think that they'd be a little bit quicker than what they are in terms of their tempo. As it's not like they're a slug or anything like that, but Wright State clocking in terms of total possessions per game, more in that neighborhood about 80th. Youngstown State, they're about 109th, and with Youngstown State, you have been able to get quite a bit of something down low out of DJ Turn It Up Burns. He's been able to give the team about 8.5 boards, 11 points per contest. Neither of these teams are terrible with regards to hitting the glass. Neither of these teams are necessarily amazing at being able to do so as well, as this is a Youngstown State team that, in terms of their rebound rate, they're about 120th in all of college basketball. This is a Wright State team that they certainly aren't going to give up their second chances as well, but they are still hovering in the neighborhood of about 96th in terms of overall rebound rate, so that's been pretty solid. You've got a Youngstown St team that's now shooting about 34.5% from three. Brett Thompson, the transfer from Tennessee Tech, is able to give you 4 assists, 12 points per contest, and then Brandon Rush, about 13.5 points per game. I do think that Youngstown State going to take advantage of the fact that Wright State doesn't necessarily have a lot of depth. I do think that Youngstown State as well is going to be able to hunker down and is going to be able to do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the three-point arc as well. This is a Youngstown State team that has had a really rough time thus far this season with that regard, as they allow opponents to shoot 31.5% from three-point range on the road compared to 42% at home. I do think that split should be ironing out just a little bit. I do foresee a little bit of regression with this Wright State three-point shooting, so I did set my total at 165. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. I do think the Youngstown State does a solid job on the glass, and they're able to pull this one out at home. Did set Youngstown State as a 5-point favorite, so want to lay the 1.5 to 2, and going to be taking a look at the under. 891, 892 on the betting board. Nebraska gets a road face-off against Iowa. Iowa is a 3 to 3.5 point favorite with your total 166. Did set my total more around 158.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. Last time I took a Nebraska under on the road, we saw Wisconsin be unable to miss, and you always do want to note the home and road splits with regards to this Iowa offense. A top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but for Iowa, they're averaging about 20.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road in the last few seasons. Meanwhile, this is a Nebraska team that, despite the debacle that we saw against Wisconsin last week, this team has still been one of your better defensive teams, especially on the road this far this season. As Nebraska, 62nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, allowing opponents to shoot only about 30.1% from three-point range in a road/neutral court environment. So I do think that that's going to be very beneficial against an Iowa team that certainly they're allowing you to bomb it from three-point range. This Iowa three-point shooting defense here on 65th in all of college basketball, with opponents shooting 37.4% from three-point range against them at home. It is an Iowa team that is going to have Ben Krikke down low. He's able to do a relatively solid job. Krikke has been able to haul in there right around about 5 or 6 rebounds per game. He's giving you 16 points per contest, and then you've had Peyton Sanford really be a nice, versatile player at about 6'7", shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range overall, but that ascends to the high 30s when he is at home. So I did think that those home and road splits going to be able to take a little bit of hold here, but this is a Nebraska team that has done a good job of being able to slow things down. Iowa, they're a top 50 team in terms of total possessions per game. They're going to be looking to run and gun, but this Nebraska team, they've done a nice job of being able to just stay in control, not really get loose with the ball or anything like that. They're about 201st in the country in terms of total possessions per game, playing at a rate of about 3.5 possessions fewer in a roadside-neutral court environment rather than at home. And for Nebraska, they've only turned the ball over 11 times per contest, while they themselves shoot about 35.5% from three-point range. A pair of guys in Bryce Williams coupled with Jawan Gary, who would be able to combine for about 25.5 points per contest. They both haul in there about 6 rebounds per game. It is a Nebraska team that has Rink Mass down low, who's done a very solid job with about 8.5 rebounds per game. And I do think that this Nebraska team should be able to win the battle on the glass. Iowa about 165th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. This is a Nebraska team that is clocking in more in that neighborhood of about 76th. And for Nebraska, they've got a top 25 rebound rate on the road in all of college basketball. I do think that they're going to be able to hold in this game. I do, though, think that Carver Hawkeye Arena going to be a little bit too much for Nebraska to overcome. So I did set my total at 158.5. I think that the defense holds up, but I do think that in the end, Iowa going to be able to get it done at home. Did set Iowa as a 4.5 point favorite. Want to lay the number in. Did set my total 158.5. Diving in on the under. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before you had our 3X games, 893 and 94. Nevada is going to be playing up to Boise St, and Boise State is an underdog of 6 to 6.5 points. So your total is 140, and with Boise State, did set them as an underdog of 5.5 points. Being able to get 6+, I'm going to be willing to take the points. It's a Nevada team that has done a very good job of being able to lock down and just play efficiently is the best way of being able to put it, as this is a Nevada team that they only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. They shoot it well at the free throw line. They've been a team that has really been able to hunker down at the defensive side of things as well. Jared Lucas, your main scorer, with about 17.5 points per contest, shoots in the mid to high 30s from three-point range, but just doesn't miss assignments. This Nevada team is a top 30 team in all of college basketball, not allowing second chances, being able to grab those defensive rebounds. But they do face off against a Boise State team that has Tyson Dagenhart. He is 6'8". He's able to can some threes. He's giving you about 6 or so rebounds per game. And this is a Boise State team that has been able to do a solid job on the glass as well. They're about 80th in all of college basketball with that regard. The biggest bugaboo that you do have with this Boise State team is that they no longer have Marcus Shaver in the fold, and that has caused them to be just trying to mix and match with regards to the back backcourt. Right now, the 6'9" point forward for this team has had to be their main facilitator as they've been able to get about 2.5 assists per contest out of Cam Martin. But this team is able to launch from three-point range as Shabuzo Egbo has been able to shoot north of 40% from three-point range. He's been able to give this team double figures. It is a Boise St team that they've been able to shoot it in the high 30s from three-point range. Meanwhile, they are 21st in all of college basketball. In terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, it is a Nevada team that doesn't get a lot of three-point shooting out of Keenan Black's year, and really they don't rely too much on the three, so I do think that that's going to affect this Nevada team a little bit less, but this Boise State team has done a very solid job defensively as well. And then when it comes to Boise State, this has been a team that has been able to travel all season long with Boise State. They are shooting a little bit less on the road rather than at home, 31.5% from three-point range in a roadside shoot corner environment compared to 40% at home. But the defense, it certainly has been there for this team as well. So I do think that this is going to be a bit more of a low-scoring slog. Boise State, well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. So I did set my total 135.5, especially with Nevada being a top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I do think that things get slowed down. I think Nevada pulls it out, but only by 5.5 points. I set my line at a 5.5, so getting 6+, taking the points with Boise State, and going to be taking a look at the under. Now we get our extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-549, 306-550. North Florida is going to be playing against Jacksonville. Jacksonville does find themselves as an underdog of 4 points with your total 145, and did set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Jacksonville. Jacksonville has seen quite a bit of a fall with regards to their defense, but good news is they're going up against a North Florida team that they don't do a tremendous job on the defensive side of things as well. North Florida, 325th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Jacksonville, 320th. And for Jacksonville, they have been getting cooked defensively in a roadside stretch court environment. They're giving up about 26 points per 100 possessions in a roadside stretch court environment rather than when they are at home. And for both of these teams, they're really allowing it from three-point range. North Florida allowing opponents to shoot 26.7% from three-point range at home, north of 41% in a roadside stretch court environment. Meanwhile, you've got a Jacksonville team that they're 308th in the country with this regard. Opponents are shooting 24.2% from three-point range against them at home, north of 39% in a roadside stretch court environment. But that said, it's not like this North Florida team is amazing with their three-point shooting. James Van Der Heijden, the 6'9" gentleman that comes in from Bucknell, he's got some size. He's able to throw it in there from three-point range. Chaz Lanier is able to give you about 14 points per contest. But I do think that Jacksonville is going to be able to remain lively in this game. They've been dealing with an injury to Bryce Workman, which has been hurting them quite a bit. But even with Workman out of the fold, this team should be able to do a solid job on the glass against the North Florida team that they've got Dorian James right now leading the way with only about 5.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, Stephon Payne, he has been the Payne train with regards to this Jacksonville team being able to haul in there right around about 6 boards per contest. And despite the fact that North Florida does have some relatively okay size, they're 319th in the country with regards to overall rebound rate. That's quite concerning. Jacksonville not amazing at about 266th, but they're able to give you a little bit more. And then they've got Robert McCray, the fourth, who's been able to do a solid job with 16 points. I actually think he's the fifth, shooting 34.5% from three-point range. And then the guy that's really stepped up, Marcus Niblack. He has been able to do a nice job giving the team double figures in 3 out of the last 5 games. Has been a hit-or-miss guy coming up from the non-D1 level, but is shooting about 38.5% from three-point range. Jacksonville needs to clean up the 14.5 turnovers per game, but goes up against a North Florida team that is one of the lesser teams in the conference at being able to generate turnovers. Meanwhile, it is a North Florida team that they themselves have failed to get past the 60-point plateau in 2 out of their last 4 games. For this Jacksonville team, 70 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 as well. So something does have to give. I did set my total at a 146.5. This is a pair of teams that just have not been able to defend all season long, and I do think that this is tight enough for late game filling, so looking at the over and at 3+, taking the points with Jacksonville. 306-551, 306-552. Queens NC is going to be playing against Stetson. This is a pick'em game with a total of 158, and hopefully our good friend Nick is listening because I am going to be siding with Queens. This was an opener of 160 with regards to the total line. At the 160, I'm willing to dive in on the under. I did set my total at 158. So the current 158 is a little bit more of a wait-and-see mode on the opener. I was willing to dive in on the under when it comes to the Stetson bunch. As I was alluding to with Nick, play super slowly. They're in the bottom 50 in terms of total possessions per game. They just do not guard the arc to save their lives. They are getting cooked. They're a bottom 100 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and as a result, this is a Stetson team that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 339th in all of college basketball. They give up about 9 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment rather than at home, and I think even Nick would admit this is a Queens NC team that's looking to buff up with regards to the defensive side of things as well. They're 27th in all of college basketball, but that said, even though Jalen Blackman is awesome for the Stetson team, he's been able to shoot north of 44% from three-point range, 20-plus points per contest. I just feel like the overall depth that you've got with this Queens team is a little bit better, and for Queens, they certainly are giving it up from three-point range as well, but not to the same level of Stetson. They allow a lot of three-point shots, but honestly, they haven't done the world's worst job with their three-point shooting defense. They are allowing opponents to shoot right in the neighborhood about 32%, 117th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, actually just a touch below 32% against D1 opponents. And when you've got all sorts of versatility, that really bodes well for you, because for the Stetson team, you've got one guy that's able to do a relatively solid job down low in Aben Gesterse, who's been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. And for Queens, they don't have anyone that gives you 7 boards per contest, but you do have a pair of guys, BJ McLaurin along with Dayton Albury, who've been able to combine for about 11.5 boards per contest. Albury has been able to give you 4 assists, shoots 37% from 3. McLaurin shoots 38% from three-point range. Then you get 39% from the outside from Chris Ashby, who's done a nice job being able to supply the team with 10-plus points per contest. And I do think that is going to be a big way that this Queens team is going to be able to win at home. This is a Stetson team that they just don't do a great job on the glass. They don't generate second chances. As a result, they're about 299th in the country in terms of overall rebound rate. Queens NC, not a whole heck of a lot better, but just a touch better at 283rd. And I do think that with Queens not having to worry about turning the ball over against a Stetson team that they just don't generate those turnovers, despite the fact that Stefan Swenson has been able to give you about 6 assists, 11.5 points per contest, and he does generate about a steal and a half per game himself. He's like the only guy that's able to do so, and this is a Stetson team that they themselves have fallen on some tough times with regards to their offense. Doesn't sound like much, but 75 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this is a Queens team that certainly they've been giving up their points. They've given up 75 plus in each of their last 5, but that said, they have gotten to at least 75 in 3 of their last 4 as well. So I do think that this is going to be a higher scoring game, but anything north of a 158, looking at the under end, I like Queens to be able to get the job done on their home floor, set them as a 2-point favorite, and wrap things up with 306-553, 306-554. Kennesaw State, we give our to Lane Kiffin, go Owls, they play Oso, Florida Gulf Coast. Dunk City is an underdog of 5.5 points. Your total on this game is 152. Kennesaw State, number 1 team in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. Florida Gulf Coast, bottom 50 team in terms of total possessions per game. Something's got to give, and I know that Kennesaw State has been playing a little bit better defensively, but I did set my total at 156. I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. It is a Kennesaw team that for the season they've been a bit rough with their three-point shooting percentage, but it's ticking upwards. They're shooting 33% from three-point range. Since Christmas, they've been shooting well north of 35% from three-point range. I think that they were just dealing some bad three-point shooting variance to begin the season. Now they've really been able to cook, especially at home. They're shooting north of 35% from three-point range, and as I always say on the show, just because you play slowly doesn't mean that you're necessarily a tremendous defense. The Florida Gulf Coast, they themselves are shooting about 35.2% from three-point range. It's a Kennesaw team that has honestly been able to do a relatively okay job with regards to their three-point shooting defense. For Kennesaw State, 148th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, while Florida Gulf Coast, they're just getting destroyed. They're allowing opponents to shoot 39.1% from three-point range. Overall, both home and road splits, they're a bottom 50 team in regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And then Tyrell Burden, 6.3 assists and 2.8 turnovers per game. He's the best floor general out there on the floor. You've got Devin Robinson, who's able to give you about 7 to 8 rebounds per game. And then Simeon Kodal has been able to do a really good job stepping up after being an afterthought a season ago with about 16.5 points per contest. And for Florida Gulf Coast, they have been dealing with quite a few injuries. Isaiah Thompson is just coming back into the fold for this team, but in his last 2 games back, he's combined for 17 points, hasn't necessarily looked like himself. You've got Zach Anderson along with Keyshawn Kellman, who have been able to combine for about 13 rebounds per game, and Anderson is shooting 50% from three-point range. I do think that we're going to see some regression on that front, and this is a Kennesaw team that, despite the fact that they do have Robinson down low, they do still leave a little bit of something to be desired on the glass, but this is also a Florida Gulf Coast team that they themselves, I don't think that they're going to be able to quite do a great job on the defensive glass. On the offensive side of things, they do generate some second chances. They're about 160th in all of college basketball. With regards to rebound rate, Kennesaw State, we're on 265th, but they rebound much better at home rather than on the road, and they're still dealing with an injury to Jace Johnson as well for this Florida Gulf Coast team. We have not seen him since early December, and I do think that that'll be just enough for Kennesaw State to be able to get it done. I did set Kennesaw State as a 6-point favorite, want to lay the number, and with the way that Florida Gulf Coast guards a 3, I do think the Kennesaw State is quite a few of them. Set by total 156. Looking at the over, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the Houston family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is by Twitter /X timeline at @_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast podcast 5 stars, that is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast. I have that 5-star review, and a big thanks to Nick Lorensen of Mid-Major Madness for joining me in the last segment, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.